Hello and welcome to your Newsmax Daily for Friday, January 10th, 2025. The second Friday of the new year, the end of the first full week of 2025, and it has been a week. I hope your day and week is going well. This morning's highly anticipated jobs report from the Labor Department showing 256,000 jobs were added to payrolls in the month of December. That is much higher than the 212 predicted, and the unemployment rate dropping to 4.1%, possibly providing less incentive to the feds to continue cutting interest rates, and because of that, the stock markets are sharply lower again. Not what I and many people were hoping for. It's another good news, bad news scenario on Wall Street. And more than 1,000 flights have already been canceled again today due to severe winter weather. I was actually scheduled to travel yesterday, which is why Kay Hill was here. Thank you, Kay. But instead, I ended up with a lot of time to watch coverage of President Jimmy Carter's funeral and the wildfires. And you know what? Screw George Bush. And it takes a lot for me to say that because I really used to like the guy. But that's my takeaway from the funeral. Trump and Obama talking is what everyone has been talking about. We'll get to that in a little bit. But the situation in California is absolutely shocking. It's just stunning. I mentioned the fire on Tuesday. It was like, oh, yeah, there's another brush fire in California. But how fast this happened, how much damage has been done, how many people have lost everything. It's just stunning. I mean, there's no words. The death toll is at least 10 now. And there is a new fire today in the Hidden Hills, Calabasas area. As of this morning, the Palisades fire was only 7% contained. The others were still at zero containment. And did you see yesterday a person was arrested in connection with starting the Kenneth fire? He should be charged with murder on top of everything else. But who knows in California, which obviously is the focus of every news show. Do not miss any of today's podcast. If you're in your car and you get where you're going, just finish listening. If you're on the treadmill working out or whatever and you're done, just work out a little more. There is so much fantastic information and commentary coming up. You don't want to miss it. First, Rob Schmitt Tonight.
Some of the most valuable real estate in the world has been turned to ashes in one of the best communities in Southern California. Look at these pictures. Look at the scale of that. All gone. House after house after house after house. As firefighters are now reporting that they were clearly understaffed in the face of this crisis and arrived to find fire hydrants that were dry soon after this all began. Many of these homes burned as firefighters stood and watched them burn. They were helpless. They had no water. The LA fires are becoming a story of California's staggering incompetence, beginning with fire hydrants that ran out of water almost immediately. The official response to that, the excuse, too much demand. The fires broke out on Tuesday, and by Tuesday night, most of the hydrants were dry. Their reservoirs totally used up. Gavin Newsom asked about this on CNN.
What is the situation with the water? Obviously, in Palisades, it ran out last night in the hydrants. I was talking to the firefighter on this block. They left because there was no water in the hydrant here.
The local folks are trying to figure that out. I mean, just when you have a system that's not dissimilar to what we've seen in other extraordinarily large-scale fires, and those hydrants are typical for 2 or 3 fires, maybe 1 fire. You have something at this scale, but again, that's going to be determined by the local.
Yeah. It's not local. Somebody else. Somebody else, but me. Not me. Anyone else. So the fire hydrants in popular areas and populated areas of California are not equipped to handle large fires. It's interesting because California is kind of known for having large fires and is just lucky that they don't usually happen in really heavily populated areas. But they did this time. That's the problem. But thinking ahead, planning for the future, averting a disaster in a populated area is not really part of the political equation for the radically left Democrat supermajority that runs the Golden State. There is nothing sexy about walking into the State House with a plan to improve LA's infrastructure and spend a huge chunk of money tethering the fire hydrants to an endless supply of water like the Pacific Ocean. What's sexy in California is equity and diversity and all of this idiocy that we see constantly coming out of California. Lesbian minority firefighters, that's hot. Infrastructure, wildfires, water, boring. Who cares? They did that 50 years ago. Those pipes still work. The entire state is now captured by fringe ideologies that are popular in places like UC Berkeley. Take a listen to LA's assistant fire chief. This is a real video.
You want to see somebody that responds to your house, your emergency, whether it's a medical call or a fire call, that looks like you. It gives that person a little bit more ease, knowing that somebody might understand their situation better. Is she strong enough to do this? Or you couldn't carry my husband out of a fire, which my response is, he got himself in the wrong place if I have to carry him out of a fire.
Also, now we're blaming people that have smoke inhalation and need to be carried out of a fire. That's a brilliant video, by the way. Not one person in the history of the world has ever cared about the color of the person who is saving them in an emergency. It has never happened in the history of the world. But in California, it has become a top priority. From NPR, firefighting is mostly white and male. The California program aims to change that. Two facts we've uncovered this week. It's apparently almost impossible for a white guy to be a firefighter in LA, and there's not enough firefighters in LA. I wonder if they're connected. The cancer of woke is thriving, and its tenets have replaced those of any kind of responsible governance in California. Every year, California's residents and businesses send $220 billion to Sacramento. That is an ungodly sum of money. The largest state budget in our country. And for that, they get back very little in return. They can't even keep their houses from burning down. Rather than focus on the basic fundamentals of running a society like roads and public safety, much of that gets burned on more attractive left-wing projects that state leaders can proudly discuss at dinner parties in San Francisco. Equity, diversity, and of course the homeless, who are now getting high-rise condos in downtown LA. Condos for the crackheads in a state that has no water and can't handle a large fire. Joe Rogan and Mel Gibson talked about this earlier today.
How crazy it is that they spent $24 billion last year on the homeless.
Yeah.
And what did they spend on preventing these wildfires?
Zero.
Zip.
And in 2019, I think Newsom said, I'm going to take care of the forests and maintain the forests and do all that kind of stuff. He didn't do anything.
Didn't do anything.
That's Mel Gibson, yes, a well-known conservative in Hollywood, but now other celebrities who have lost everything are speaking out against the state's political leaders. This is Newsmax correspondent Christina Thompson on American Agenda.
Sarah Foster, she wrote on X, quote, "We pay the highest taxes in California. Our fire hydrants were empty. Our vegetation was overgrown, brush not cleared. Our reservoirs were emptied by our governor to save fish. The fire department budget was slashed by the mayor. But thank God drug addicts are getting their drug kits." She then tagged the mayor and Governor Gavin Newsom saying, quote, "Resign. Your far left policies have ruined our state and also our party." Now, if you watch The Biggest Loser, this is Jillian Michaels. She tweeted out, "Just evacuated my mom." The mayor apparently in Ghana. The fire department budget was cut. Someone made the decision to not refill the reservoirs, and now fire hydrants are dry. Leadership in California is beyond negligent. Michaels also did some homework on those dry fire hydrants, writing, quote, "In 2014, voters in California, $2.7 billion of their taxpayer money. They put that towards securing future water storage. However, not a single reservoir was complete more than 10 years later." She calls that an outrage. Sarah Michelle Gellar putting on her Instagram story, quote, "City of LA, you wanted everyone to evacuate, yet you have a complete gridlock and not one traffic cop on the roads helping people out of the line of that fire." Former Dancing with the Stars professional dancer Valentine Shermovsky writing, quote, "The taxes we pay for third world infrastructure is unbelievable. Come on." Bob, Katrina.
Christina Thompson, again, impossibly difficult to wrap one's head around those images that we're seeing in the reality. Again, it looks like a terrible, terrible movie, but of course, not a movie at all. This is reality. Christina Thompson, thank you.
And yes, I know what you're thinking. Those are mostly very wealthy celebrities, and for the most part, you don't even like celebrities. For some of those people, it may have been one of 2 or 3 homes that they own in different parts of the country, right? Especially Paris Hilton. But not everyone there is a wealthy celebrity. And what about the people that drive there to work in those stores and schools and take care of the lawns, etc., etc.? Right? I mean, there's a massive domino effect to this. More from Chris Salcedo.
Once iconic streets are reduced to rubble, as if Los Angeles had been bombed by a foreign enemy. Sadly, the enemy that has led to this devastation is from within. Confronted by the obvious lack of preparedness, California's leftist governor, Gavin Newsom, was quick to duck blame for the devastation.
What is the situation with the water? Obviously, in Palisades, ran out last night in the hydrants. I was talking to the firefighter on this block. They left because there was no water in the hydrant here.
The local folks are trying to figure that out. I mean, just when you have a system that's not dissimilar to what we've seen in other extraordinarily large-scale fires, whether it be pipe, electricity, or whether it just be the complete overwhelm of the system. I mean, those hydrants are typical for 2 or 3 fires, maybe 1 fire. You have something at this scale, but again, that's got to be determined by the local.
There's no water in the fire hydrants, Governor. Oh, that's not my job. Oh, wait, but it is. Governor Newsom and his leftists in California's government have undertaken a scam that has made Southern California a dehydrated husk, spiked up water costs to unpayable levels, and parched an entire region, making it even more susceptible to wildfires. Environmentalist kooks have instituted policies that have diverted and wasted billions of gallons of fresh water every year to save an obscure fish called the Delta smelt that many people don't believe was in danger to begin with. The water no longer flows into Southern California and the Colorado River. Instead, the fresh water is dumped right into the Pacific Ocean, jacking up prices, enriching left-wing interests, enriching water authorities in government, and resulting in the death of human beings from reoccurring wildfires. But let's take Pretty Boy Newsom there at his word that the dry local fire hydrants are not his problem, but the responsibility of local leftists like the MIA mayor of Los Angeles, former Congresswoman Karen Bass. Here she is refusing to answer legitimate questions as she was returning to her burned out city from an overseas trip to Ghana.
Do you owe citizens an apology for being absent while their homes were burning? Do you regret cutting the fire department budget by millions of dollars, Madam Mayor? Have you nothing to say today? Have you absolutely nothing to say to the citizens today? Elon Musk says that you're utterly incompetent. Are you considering your position? Madam Mayor, have you absolutely nothing to say to the citizens today who are dealing with this disaster? No apology for them.
If you've seen that video of the mayor of Los Angeles, right? Not Podunk, California, Los Angeles, is just dumbfounded and speechless, refusing to say anything, which under any normal circumstances, and by normal circumstances, I mean, anything outside of government, that would be immediate grounds for dismissal or termination, right? Fast forward a bit here to Chris Salcedo's close.
I don't know about you, but I'm sick and tired of having to give the imprimatur of leader to those who can't lead. I'm sick of having to show respect to those who institute policies that are literally killing our people. I'm sick of those in the media and in both political parties who say that bipartisanship is the most important thing when one party in this country has betrayed every American principle under the sun. No, I think it's time you and I started calling a spade a spade. The overwhelming majority of Democrats and an uncomfortable number of those who call themselves Republicans are unqualified for the jobs they hold. They stick us with the bill after their lack of qualifications results in massive calamity or death. In many cases, we are being ruled by the least qualified among us, and it has to stop. To you folks in California, I say this. How many lives must be lost? How much quality of life must you lose? How many lives have to be shattered? How much more of your hard-earned money must be squandered before you change course? Government isn't a welfare program for the criminally stupid, But that's exactly the chief attribute that the lion's share of Democrat politicians bring to our society. Our people must raise our standards. Doing the same thing over and over and over again and expecting a different result is the definition of insanity. And insane is what you will be in California if you continue to elect leftists.
That's Chris Salcedo, a.k.a. your liberty-loving Latino, the host of the Chris Salcedo Show, 4 o'clock Eastern on Newsmax. New York City's former woke mayor, Bill de Blasio, was in studio with Katrina Zisch and Bob Brooks. De Blasio, no surprise, defends his fellow Democrats and blames it all on climate change. And have you noticed now, not only Democrat politicians, but a lot of the legacy media, well, I guess that's the same thing, are calling it a weather event. They're getting away from calling it wildfires and calling it a weather event.
It seems like priority is not being given to the tax-paying individuals who live there. Your thoughts?
Well, I don't agree with that. I have family out there in L.A. I've been talking to them the last few days. I mean, it's unbelievable. It's surreal what's going on there. It is literally a perfect storm. And I think we have to begin by saying what the hell's going on here, not with the government, but what's going on with Mother Nature. We've not seen something like this. The world's changing. And I think for all of us, we got to be blunt that the things we used to think worked yesterday just don't work anymore.
Yeah, Mayor, I'm not going to disagree that this kind of was a perfect storm when you talk about all the winds, but I got sound bites here from other firefighters out there that said the budget cuts that started in July were significant. The additional millions requested in savings, they were going to be devastating. Staffing and budget cuts doesn't allow the plan and prepare for us to pre-deploy as we should have. I mean, we got fire officials out there saying that we didn't have what we needed to get done because the money went somewhere else. They're not talking about the environment out there. What say you?
Look, no one should be afraid of figuring out what the truth is in all this. I think the fact that the mayor's saying there has to be a full review is exactly right, and it should be fast. But the job one is to get this handled. She's been a very effective mayor on many fronts, particularly reducing homelessness. And that's been a massive problem in L.A. for a long time. So I want to give her credit for that. And she's communicated during this crisis and obviously has had some very effective people doing the work. Her first responders and the leadership of the public safety agencies have been really effective against extraordinary odds. So I want to put it in perspective. But I also think we all got to come to grips, Democrats and Republicans, that when these kind of events are coming together, it's not like yesterday. It's terrifying, the scale of things. I learned it the hard way myself as mayor. What we used to think when we got a warning something might happen compared to what can happen nowadays, night and day. And it's even beyond the reach of government to address a problem of this magnitude. So I think we got to get ready for something different here.
But it does seem also as the world evolves and as things evolve that our lawmakers do need to be prepared for the next iteration of that. And again, what we're hearing and what Bob pointed out is that these lawmakers were not prepared for that. And we're still focusing on homelessness. And in doing so, they are now have many more people who are homeless, but who are working tax-paying citizens on their hand. And I just want to point out another thing here. We know that in 2014 in California, $2.7 billion were spent by taxpayers. It was voted on to rebuild or to build new reservoirs. It's now 2025, and the money that was supposed to go for that has not. So again, how do you explain that? I understand if you want to focus on the environment and things changing, but at the same time, it's the lawmakers' responsibility to get things done to help roll with that. So
in the end, executives have to take responsibility. And I'll tell you, I had to fight when Michael Bloomberg wanted to close firehouses in New York City. I fought against that, and I was happy to protect our firehouses. So I certainly understand how important it is to protect fire service. But I'm not an expert on the L.A. budget. I can tell you this much. If you ask most Angelitos a few months ago what's the biggest thing on their mind, they would have said homelessness. That was a crisis out of control. And again, I give the mayor credit for making some progress on that. So I hear the way you're comparing one particular budget item to another. I would go back to first principles here. Folks in L.A. wanted the homelessness problem addressed. They wanted to get people off the streets. They wanted that madness ended. She made some real progress on that.
Former New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio in studio with Katrina Zisch and Bob Brooks. The biggest concern of most people there was homelessness. Well, who is responsible for creating the massive homelessness problem? The same Democrat lawmakers who just a few months ago voted overwhelmingly to keep L.A. a sanctuary city, adding to the homelessness. All right, let's move on to yesterday's funeral of former President Jimmy Carter, the other huge story of the day. 5 living presidents in one place at the same time, all sitting together. It was also amazing. If you haven't seen highlights, you need to see some of the video, especially how George Bush and Laura Bush completely, rudely, totally dissed Donald Trump and former and future First Lady Melania Trump. They went right straight over to his good buddy Barack Obama, gave him a little slap on the stomach, kind of like your uncle who you hadn't seen in a while would do to you at a family get-together or something, like, how you doing, kid? What's up? The last few years, several years, George Bush, has just really gotten on my nerves. All right, the big talk, as you know, is all about, or was all about, the Trump-Obama conversation. This is Newsmax chief political analyst Mark Halperin.
Watching Carter's funeral a bit today, too, and you see all of the living presidents. It's something we don't see that often. Anything you took away from that? Actually, Trump was sitting right next to Obama.
Not just sitting next to him, but chatting a pretty friendly way.
We need a lip reader.
My lip reading for that. Look, there were a lot of moments, and we don't want to take away from the Carter family and what went on in terms of the speaking program. But the tableau of the former presidents, the former vice presidents, there was a Trump-Pence handshake. I'm not sure when the last one of those was, but that was pretty notable to me. And then there are people who feel their human intelligence allows them to suggest there was frostiness between certain categories of people. I want to go back and review the tape, but there certainly was some cases of handshakes and laughter, and some cases where there seemed to be a lack of even eye contact.
Ooh, yes. Well, it is a historic day, though, nonetheless.
Bianca De La Garza with political analyst Mark Halperin, who mentioned lip reading, right? I think Bianca mentioned that as well. Today, there are several stories all over social media from lip readers or about lip readers and what Trump and Obama may have actually been saying. President Biden, as you know, gave the eulogy.
Throughout his life, he showed us what it means to be a practitioner of good works and a good and faithful servant of God and of the people. I miss him, but I take solace in knowing that he and his beloved Rosalind are reunited again.
None of the other presidents spoke at the service. Vice President Harris was visibly upset at Obama for having what appeared to be a jovial conversation with Trump. I mean, at one point they were both laughing, and she was not liking it. President Biden was actually scheduled to go to Rome late yesterday, where he planned to meet with Pope Francis at the Vatican and Italy's prime minister, the one that loves Trump. But he canceled the trip because of the wildfires in L.A. While the funeral was happening at the National Cathedral, Congress was working on Capitol Hill. And the Senate, as expected, overwhelmingly passed the Laken-Riley Act, approved earlier this week in the House. It could now be the very first piece of legislation that President Trump signs when he takes office, the Laken-Riley Act. Sometimes it is just amazing the way things work out, right? Amazing or fate. Like the fact that today would have been Laken-Riley's 23rd birthday. Born on January 10th, 2022, viciously, senselessly murdered last year by an illegal alien. And I have to share this article with you from the New York Post. A county in New York being ordered to pay $60 million to illegal immigrants. One of my relatives in New York sent me this yesterday. My cousin Gaetano, who is a subscriber to the podcast, a lover of Newsmax. So shout out, cuz. A federal judge ruled that the sheriff's office in Suffolk County, Long Island, where I basically grew up, by the way, acted on its own when it held undocumented immigrants, which means illegal. Undocumented, having no documents, illegal. The sheriff's office held them for ICE agents to come and get them for deportation. Except New York state law does not allow local police to do that. Several of the illegal immigrants filed a class action lawsuit, if you believe that or not, on behalf of a few hundred illegal immigrants that this had happened to. The judge's ruling said the county violated the constitutional rights of the illegal immigrants because state law didn't authorize the sheriff to hold them. Several months ago, the New York State Attorney General, you know who that is, right? Letitia James, wrote that detaining an immigrant for deportation is unauthorized by state law. Well, she left out the word illegal immigrant or undocumented, which means you broke the law and you're here illegally. And this federal judge ruled that Suffolk County has to pay these illegal immigrants $60 million. This is the insanity that goes on in New York. And by the way, right as I wrapped up, New York convicted Trump, which we all knew was coming in the so-called hush money case, backed by Letitia James. All right, be sure you keep up with all of the news and breaking developments throughout the day and during the weekend on Newsmax, N2, and Newsmax.com. There will be plenty of it. Begins each and every day with Wake Up America and then the Wake Up America Weekend Edition. I'm Tony Marino. This is the Newsmax Daily. Thank you so much for listening, as always. Enjoy the rest of your Friday. Have a fantastic and safe weekend. And keep on fighting the good fight.
News breaks every minute, every day. You need the app, the Newsmax app. Find it free on your smartphone store. Then watch us anytime, anywhere.
Relentlessly slowing the spread of the stupid every day. It's the Rob Carson Show.
Hey, it's Rob Carson. My podcast is about leading-edge commentary and opinion, great guests, and the biggest political comedy in the country. My satire was featured on the Rush Limbaugh program for over a decade, and now it's fresh and new and on my podcast. It's not just another desk-pounding conservative tirade. It's about entertaining, informing, and motivating. Patriotism and hope. You don't need more stress in your life. You need to feel good and, dare I say, even laugh. Subscribe and download at your favorite podcast platform or go to newsmax.com/listen.
Information. Truth is freedom. Is Newsmax. It's real news for real people.